Good morning, everyone. Josh with Severe Weather. Happy Friday to you. We've got quite a bit of late season activity in the tropics, both in the Atlantic and the Pacific. And I'm going to focus a lot of this on Tropical Storm Tammy, which is poised to affect a good chunk of the Lesser Antilles and could produce some hurricane conditions, flooding rain, and some destruction here, depending on the exact track that it takes here. But the thing that I'm monitoring for you guys here is that the storm is starting to fend off wind shear, grow in size, and slow down. And when a storm slows down, that means it's going to be causing a longer period of potentially extremely bad weather as it approaches the islands here. We're also going to talk more about some potential severe weather in the southeast today and some big changes coming in the weather this weekend into next week. So here's my screen. I'm going to share it with you all. This is Tammy, which is strengthening with a lot of the convection starting to really blow up here on the eastern part of the system. This is Barbados, and here are the Leeward Islands. The Windward Islands are here, and Tammy is getting a lot closer. We do have watches and warnings in effect here for many of these islands. This is Tammy on the map. You can see it's got 60-mile-per-hour wind, so a stronger tropical storm. The pressure is starting to drop down to 1,000 millibars. And more importantly, the system is slowing down. Yesterday at this time, it was moving at about 18 miles per hour. Today, it's moving at about 8 miles per hour, which is a decent-sized jog versus a sprint, moving to the west-northwest. So unfortunately, Tammy is slowing down, and that means we're going to be dealing with it throughout the entire weekend in the islands here and dealing with higher amounts of rain as well. We also have an area that we're going to have to keep an eye on for gradual development in the Southwest Caribbean. It looked like a few weeks ago it might be up in here. Now it's starting to trend farther south as our front has made it all the way down through Jamaica. I don't think this is going to become a named system, but it very much could produce some rough weather over Central America in this upcoming week, and then eventually head into the Pacific and become a threat there. So here's a look at the wide view, and I'm going to cover up ads, but I do appreciate tropicaltidbits.com, a great website, great resource for those of you who do want to track the tropics or general weather. And really, all you see on the map are two significant storms. This is Hurricane Norma in the Pacific. I'm going to talk about Norma in a little bit. And that is going to be an impact on the weather in the U.S. next week. A lot of that moisture is going to get drawn northeastward with a trough. That's going to produce some pretty heavy rain and maybe some severe weather here in the plains. But in the shorter term, let's focus on Tammy, because that is going to potentially get to hurricane strength over the weekend as it approaches the islands, especially the Leeward Islands. In between the two, we do have some areas to watch, but nothing developing very quickly. We do have an area of potential concentrated thunderstorm activity over the late part of the weekend. We also have an area that very well could become our next depression in the Pacific, with the next name on the list being Otis. The U.S. is actually really quiet. Strong ridge of high pressure over the western U.S. is keeping temperatures very toasty through the weekend, but we do have a big trough that's going to move into the northwest later this weekend into early next week, and that's going to send temperatures crashing down and bring more unsettled weather into the country next week. And unfortunately, we end the week here in the east with more rain, another storm system over the Great Lakes heading east. That's going to produce some significant amounts of rain across southeast Canada, across the northeast, especially later on Saturday into Sunday. And again, we're setting our clocks for the weekend because we know it's going to rain here in the east. And I think next weekend we could see the same thing. And the weekend after that looks like maybe there's something else to track. So I wish we could break the cycle, but unfortunately, that's what we're stuck with right now. So I guess we got to just make the best of it. So in the Caribbean, pretty quiet, but you can see thunderstorm activity has accelerated across Panama and Colombia. Right now, though, there's just no central area thunderstorms, which is good. So whatever does try to get going here is going to take its sweet time to develop at this point. On the Pacific side, more action to watch here south of Mexico, and then more thunderstorms moving off of El Salvador. You can see a pretty significant front here swinging through Florida, and lots of high clouds and even some showers over the Florida Keys into northern Cuba, and those are going to get blown into the Bahamas here today. And then we do have the remains of what was Sean about a week ago, moving away from Puerto Rico and getting absorbed into this front, more of a mid-level feature than a surface low at this point. Here's the central Atlantic. Here you can see Tropical Storm Tammy intensifying, fighting wind shear and starting to show a little bit more resilience here to the wind shear it's been fighting for the last week and a half since it moved off of Africa. And this, unfortunately, is not the trend we like to see here in the islands. I'm going to talk more about some of the specific weather impacts you guys can expect. We do have another disturbance behind it that I don't think is going to develop due to stronger wind shear. Here's a closer look at Tropical Storm Tammy, getting closer now to Barbados. Eventually, we'll be moving towards Guadeloupe, towards St. Lucia, towards the Middle Islands here, and then tracking northwest along the islands or very close to the islands, maybe on the eastern side of this. But a rare situation where we do see a system like this slow down and basically rake the entire island chain. Usually storms move in and then they're away in the next day or two. This system's not going to behave that way. It's hitting an area of weaker steering flow. And as a result, more rain is being predicted. And if the storm track goes a little bit left of where the actual forecast shows it going, which is very close to or just over the islands, or maybe on the eastern side of these islands, then all the nasty weather on the east side ends up over the islands. So if you are in the islands, this is the time to prepare as weather is expected to go downhill. You can see the island chain here. This is from my cover photos, cyclonicwx.com. Tropical Storm Tammy growing in size, two main areas of heavy thunderstorms, so even well away from the center, which is somewhere in here. We've got very deep convection and heavy showers and storms that are going to be moving towards Trinidad and Tobago as we head on into tonight and tomorrow. The local radar from Barbados shows our area of concentrated rain and thunderstorms, and it's really pouring hard out here, and winds are probably gusting close to hurricane force. These winds are going to avoid Barbados. They should track a little bit more to the north, but as we head closer to Guadeloupe and eventually Antigua and Barbuda, I do expect this area of deepest convection is going to move right over those island chains and produce some very rough weather. Here is a look at the ensemble showing a very high chance of tropical storm force winds over pretty much the entire Leeward Island chain into the British Virgin Islands and the northern Windward Islands. And then there's more uncertainty as we get on into the middle of next week. A few ensemble members slow the storm down and keep it here between Puerto Rico and Bermuda. Others take it northeast and recurve the system, which I think is what it's eventually going to do, but I am still guarding against potentially something that could get stuck in here quite a bit longer as steering flow collapses. You will see there's really no chance from the European ensembles of anything forming into a tropical storm in the Western Caribbean. Everything should be on the Pacific side, but I would not be completely shocked if something weak tried to get forming here near Costa Rica and the southern portion of Nicaragua. Here's a look at the official National Hurricane Center track. And you'll see two things. Number one, the storm's slowing down and starting to take a right turn. Number two, it's going over very warm ocean heat content. These dashed lines here indicate areas where the heat content is very significant. And so as a result, as wind shear continues to lessen, the storm is in a position to strengthen, and it could get all the way up to high-end Category 1 strength. And a few models show it even going a little bit stronger than that, not surprisingly. So that's something we do need to keep an eye on, especially here in the northern Leeward Islands, in the British Virgin Islands, maybe even the U.S. Virgin Islands. But still some uncertainty on this thing as it comes in. Right now, we do have tropical storm watches for Barbados, for Martinique, tropical storm warnings for Dominica, Guadeloupe, Antigua, and Barbuda, heading over into the northern Leeward Islands here. I wish it will actually display this, but it won't. Montserrat, St. Kitts, Nevis, St. Barthélemy, and Anguilla, and I believe Antigua and Barbuda are also in that tropical storm watch or warning. We do have a hurricane watch. That's the pink here, also for most of the islands in the tropical storm warning area. And what that means is we're definitely expecting tropical storm conditions in these areas that have the purple line, but it's also possible we could see hurricane conditions briefly, or if the storm strengthens faster, more likely. And if that happens, we're going to see this grow into a hurricane warning. And I think the islands that have to be most concerned with that would be Antigua and Barbuda, but I would certainly not let our guard down in Guadeloupe. And certainly as we get up here into the northern Leeward Islands, St. Barthélemy, as well as Anguilla, we definitely could see hurricane conditions here, and especially just offshore. Here are the model tracks, and pretty strong consensus that this is going to ride about 7 to 8 islands before it leaves here late this weekend, probably by Monday morning, and then turns away to the north and east. But there are some ensembles that show it turning west. I'll show you that in a minute. And most of our forecast model guidance shows us getting to strong tropical storm strength today and then up to hurricane strength tomorrow or tomorrow night. Big question mark is that going to be right over the islands? Is it going to be just offshore? Is it going to be as it's moving away? Still, I don't quite know the answer to that. But I would be prepared for this storm to fight off the wind shear and strengthen a little bit quicker, because it is definitely got a healthier structure than Philippe did and then that Sean did. Those systems that basically were, I would call them shorties almost. Philippe wasn't a shorty, but it never really got past 50 miles per hour. So it just underachieved the entire time. The European ensemble, overall, we're seeing this track right near or just east of the islands and then pulling away on Monday and then turning northeast into the open Atlantic, becoming post-tropical and unfortunately aimed again at Western Europe, which is dealing with a nasty storm as we speak. But there are some semblances of this system trying to stall south of Bermuda and maybe trying to curve back to the left. If it does that, I think it would weaken, but it also means we may see more impact down the road in the Bahamas and Florida. It's an outlying solution, but it is a solution that I am watching for you guys. So I would say probably an 80% chance this is going to end up a fish storm after it moves away, but there's still that 20% chance that we need to keep an eye on it even into the end of October. Some strange things sometimes do happen here in this part of the world, so we need to watch that. Here's the HAFS. This is a tropical model, and it's going to show you kind of how the wind field is behaving. And you can see here, this is Barbados, and the strongest winds are projected to stay well to the east of Barbados this morning. As the storm moves north and west, it is expected to grow, and we are seeing from this tropical model the potential that this will be a hurricane by this afternoon and into tonight, and a compact hurricane, but one that can produce some very strong wind. Now, if the model ends up being wrong and it ends up farther left, then these 13-mile-per-hour wind gusts we see on Guadeloupe could turn into 60 or 70-mile-per-hour winds. Certainly, Antigua and Barbuda need to be on the very much on the alert here for tomorrow afternoon into tomorrow night. We could see the storm track right over these islands, or at least very close. And if it does that, then we could see sustained winds over 85 miles per hour. The rest of the islands need to be on the lookout as well. Right now, the consensus is that this system goes on the eastern side here and mostly impacts Guadeloupe, Antigua, and Barbuda. But if it ends up 100 miles west, then every other island is going to get in on those winds as well. And unfortunately, that could be really bad. This is Sunday morning, and the HAFS model is pulling things away. We're still going to have heavy rain and gusty winds, but the core of the storm is pulling away. And you can see it's going to stay well north and east of St. Croix, St. Thomas, and Puerto Rico. We are going to get some rain, but the strongest winds and waves are going to stay well offshore here. The storm is expected to strengthen some more as we get on into next week. You can see it's going to grow in size. Swells are going to pick up. Surf's going to be rough even on the east coast of the U.S. If you're planning a late beach trip here in Florida, be preparing for that Monday and Tuesday. And you can see that this is projecting the storm to become a Category 3 hurricane by Tuesday night with winds of 115 miles per hour. And then it gets into some cooler water and wind shear starts taking over and weakening the system gradually. The European model is showing our area of strongest wind gusts, and right now below tropical storm force until we get into tomorrow morning, then winds pick up. You can see the European has wind gusts over 100 miles per hour possibly here tomorrow night into Sunday morning. Fortunately, those avoid the islands, but look how close we're getting over here to Antigua. We very well could see this shift to the west, and I have seen the general trend shift left here over the last day. So I would not completely rule out hurricane conditions on these islands. That's why we do have that hurricane watch in effect. Rainfall is also going to be a problem here this weekend. You can see it's going to pick up very quickly here as we get through the evening hours tonight. Then tomorrow, our heaviest rain is expected to fall. And right now, the bullseye stays well east of the islands, 14 inches of rain. Again, if it shifts west, we see higher amounts. Unfortunately, after this system leaves, we get into a very unsettled pattern in the Caribbean next week, and flooding becomes a greater threat. You can see totals start climbing here, potentially over 2 to 3 inches. That even includes eastern and northern Puerto Rico and Vieques, as we could see rainfall totals getting over 4 inches by next weekend. Stay tuned for that. In the Pacific, really the big picture storm is Norma. We do have another system that's got a medium chance of becoming a depression and probably will become Tropical Storm Otis by next week. And that's going to stick around just south of the Mexican Riviera right through next week. Norma has started to weaken. It's now turning north-northwest. It was looping a bit to the north-northeast. Winds are still at major hurricane force, 115 miles per hour, and the pressure is 955 millibars. Here's a look at Norma. Very large system. It has peaked in intensity. I believe it will start to weaken as it loses the highest ocean heat content, but still a powerful storm, one that's going to bring significant impacts this weekend to Los Cabos, Cabo San Lucas, and the whole Baja de Sur, and then should weaken as it moves towards mainland Mexico, and then setting up a flood threat at that point beyond early next week. Behind it, we do see another area to watch, and then we're going to keep an eye on this area in the Southwest Caribbean, which I think crosses over and could have the potential to become a tropical storm next weekend. Here's a closer look at Hurricane Norma. And the storm did get up to Category 4 strength. It's now down to 3. And you can see some wind shear on the western side, which is limiting that outflow, breaking up the eye wall a little bit. I think the storm's at its peak and will probably drop down to Category 2 here today and then 1 tomorrow. But nonetheless, it's going to come very close to Cabo San Lucas, especially the eastern part of Baja Sur. Wind speeds may still be at hurricane intensity when it does that here tomorrow evening and into early on Sunday. Then the storm moves northeast. It gets caught up in wind shear and weakens significantly, but still a dangerous system because of the rain that's going to move into these mountains here. So definitely one to watch, but not one that's going to be as bad as Lydia was here about 9-10 days ago. Here's a look at Norma, and you can see what's left of it's going to race up into the plains next week in about 96 to 120 hours. This is not indicating necessarily we have a tropical storm in Iowa, but the moisture is heading that way with the big trough moving east into the U.S. It's going to be interesting to watch tropical moisture getting involved with a powerful trough. So we're going to have tropical rains and severe weather in the warm sector and probably heavy snow here in the cold sector by the middle of next week. You can see we're done with the peak of the intensity. We'll drop to Category 2 today and then down to 1 tomorrow, and probably a remnant low by the time we get to next Monday. Here's a look at the European ensemble guidance. Still some uncertainty on the exact track, but likely to impact Baja Sur here. It could make landfall there and weaken faster, or it could remain just offshore and take a little bit longer to do so, but likely turning northeast into northwestern Mexico, north of Mazatlan. Here's a look at the wind field, and you can see wind speeds are still going to be up there close to hurricane force on Cabo San Lucas, 50, 60, maybe 70 miles per hour. The stronger winds are going to be just off the coast. And then the system's going to pull away and weaken significantly over the weekend, over the opening of the Gulf of California. By the time it moves into northwestern Mexico, wind speeds 70 to 75 miles per hour offshore and probably 40 to 60 right where it comes onshore. And then very quickly, we see deterioration with the system as it heads into South Texas. Winds are going to pick up in South Texas, could see gusts over 30 miles per hour across the Big Sky country and the Hill country. And this could also include some stronger storms with it as we get into Tuesday and Wednesday in Oklahoma, Kansas, and maybe northwestern Missouri. But stay tuned on that. The rest of the tropics, not super active, but we do have multiple areas to keep an eye on here. South Pacific, possible disturbance, still a weakening system, Sanba here in the Gulf of Tonkin, affecting southern China and Vietnam. We have an area to watch in the Bay of Bengal and another area that will likely become a cyclone here and affect the Arabian Sea and maybe the Arabian Peninsula. In the U.S., we have one trough swinging through the eastern U.S. It'll turn colder behind this system here this weekend, but a warm-up is coming right behind it. So this chill that's coming down is not going to last us very long. You will see, though, a large area of cold air aloft here across central Canada. So winter weather is lurking to our north next week, and we'll start to see invasions of it as we get longer off into the end of October and especially into November. We could see quite a big pattern flip coming. You will see, though, that this heat over the west is going to break down as this trough moves into California early next week. That picks up what's left of Norma. And with these lowering heights and the southwest flow aloft, we're likely going to see some severe weather across the midsection here by Tuesday and Wednesday. It'll be a warm end to next week and beginning of the following week, but you see these bluer colors indicating lowering heights over the northeast. And this pattern here by Halloween does favor snow across eastern Canada and potentially even some lake effect snow here over the eastern Great Lakes by the time we get to the beginning of November. So stay tuned on that. The cold air is going to be around probably about 5 days from that outbreak before things moderate here by the first weekend of November. GFS model shows big storm over the eastern U.S. this weekend, moving into Atlantic Canada, some chilly air behind it. We will dry out and improve here early next week. Here comes the warm-up. Here comes our big system in the west. Here comes our tropical moisture. We'll probably see some severe weather from North Texas up into Nebraska, heavy rains farther north in Minnesota and the Dakotas, and then heavy snow in the interior of Oregon and eventually in the Northwest. Big snowstorm over the Canadian prairies, maybe even a bit of ice over northwestern Ontario as that warm air rides over this colder air mass coming down. But this is going to be a big shock for us coming here by the end of the week, and maybe even a big wet snowfall from Nebraska and Wyoming northeastward into Minnesota and even upper Michigan. So it is that time of the year where we deal with a bigger collision of air masses. We talk about warmth in the Northeast and winter weather in the upper Midwest. And as we get to next weekend, we may be tracking a winter storm moving up into Canada and lake effect snow behind it here, and maybe another system by Halloween to keep an eye on, following with some chilly air over the Northeast by the beginning of October. We have a severe weather threat. It's not very big, but there could be severe wind and hail, mainly across eastern Georgia, all the way through South Carolina, including the mountains, and across the southern tier of North Carolina. The best chance for that's this afternoon, with a waning chance by this evening. Taking a look at our shorter term models, you can see there'll be some showers moving across the central Savannah River Valley into the Midlands of South Carolina this morning. These could pick up some and become intense over the low country here around 3-4 o'clock, around Savannah, around Richmond Hill, all the way up to Hardeeville and just west of Charleston here about 4 or 5 o'clock. There's another wave that's going to drop down that it could impact the Charlotte area, Rock Hill, Fort Mill around 5-6 o'clock, then moving through the Uaries and then dropping south and east towards Myrtle Beach and towards Wilmington this evening. And then things should settle down after that. You can see here, there will be potentially some rotating updrafts, probably not tornadoes, but certainly some stronger winds. And you can see the model is showing those happening here north of Savannah into Beaufort County, into Hampton County here, and all the way over towards Charleston early this evening. And then we also have the threat for stronger storms right around the Metrolina area, starting up here near Blacksburg and over towards Clover, and then dropping eastward along the border, eventually ending up in Myrtle Beach early this evening. So that's what we're going to watch for you guys here in the Northeast. We are talking more rain for the weekend, 2 bands of it coming, one coming this afternoon and evening across New England, the second one moving through eastern PA and central New York overnight tonight, and big rains coming for New England. Could be very nasty in Boston around this time tomorrow. That shifts up into Maine and New Hampshire, a very wet afternoon. Unfortunately, not good for those of you that are planning to look at some fall foliage. It's going to look pretty rough here on Saturday. And it's still going to be wet Sunday morning across northern New England. Some snowflakes mix into the higher elevation, so we are going to watch that. Wind gusts are going to ramp up here as well. We could see gusts over 40 miles per hour in the mountains and around Lake Ontario. We'll see that ramping up across northern New England this afternoon, and more strong winds as this storm intensifies on the backside of it across Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York tomorrow afternoon, shifting into the Maine seacoast as well as the New England coastline here by the time we get to late Saturday night, early Sunday morning. Looking at Atlantic Canada, we are going to see quite a bit of rain moving in here to Nova Scotia overnight tonight, and especially first thing tomorrow. That lifts into Newfoundland here on Saturday. Then we see the next wave forming, a pretty deep low pressure system here, stronger than what we saw with our tropical systems that came through. So we will have a lot of rain, and we are going to have some stronger wind gusts as well, perhaps over 90 kilometers per hour in southeastern Newfoundland here tomorrow afternoon. And on the backside, we do see wind gusts over 60 kilometers per hour over Nova Scotia and Prince Edward Island on Sunday. So stay tuned for that. But I really appreciate y'all's time today. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you did enjoy this video, please consider becoming a subscriber. If you're a subscriber, there is an option if you feel led to support me at $9.99 a month. I'm going to be prioritizing my responses to you folks that are paying members. We have some more perks coming in the future as this channel continues to grow. But I really do appreciate y'all. I love you guys because you really keep me going. And honestly, what really does keep me going is my faith in Jesus Christ, my Savior. As a Christian, God has led me to do this. He has called me to help save lives, to get people prepared for major weather, and to present my expertise to you guys. But he's also commissioned me to share the good news with you guys. I have some great news for you all, and it all involves what you are thinking and what you are saying. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and they that love it shall eat the fruit thereof." Death obviously is something we all think about, especially some of us that are a little bit older in age, a little more advanced. The great news is that if you confess Jesus Christ as your Savior, the Lord is going to give you eternal life. You're going to be able to live with Jesus eternally, and you will be saved. And that is great news. If you speak death, you speak negative, those words can have extreme consequences. So that's just something to keep in mind. For me, every time that I got myself into a funk, I go back to this verse and realize that if I speak life, if I speak positive things, affirmations, then I will be blessed in many ways. That's the fruit that's promised to us. Somebody told me one time that whatever you say, if whether it be a high or a low point in your life, to also follow with, because that's exactly what I want. If you say, man, I'm just dying over here, I'm having an awful day. If you say, because that's exactly what I want, well, guess what? That's what's going to be manifesting here. But if you also say that, hey, God, I'm having a rough day, but you are a great God. You've got wonderful things coming for me. You're going to bless me in many ways because that's exactly what I want. You can see how the context changes. So I just wanted to share that good news with you guys, but I would love to pray for you if you are in a situation where you're struggling, where you want to speak affirmations, but you know it's a very rough road ahead. I specifically would love to pray for you because we've all been there and many of us are still there right now. So I hope you all have a wonderful Friday. Please be safe in the islands and in Mexico if you are watching from those areas. And I will have another video tomorrow morning. Hope you all have a great day and make it a good one. God bless you.